Okay. Chairwoman Johnson, Vice Chairman Reese-Wong, Member Bettenker,
Here.
Member Connors,
Present.
Member Foley,
Present.
Member Medeiros, here, Member Schultz, Executive Director Miguel Luna,
Here.
Legal Counsel Raymond Carter.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The first matter on the agenda is the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of May 6, 2025. I know I did have a brief discussion with counsel on this. Is it prudent for us to modify it?
Yeah,
Suggest we
yes,
modify at least?
you could entertain a motion that would modify the minutes under section 10 of the minutes with respect to the motion, the first motion that was made for the compensatory time policy. The vice chair did have a question on it. I went back, I looked over the actual audio recording of that meeting. Mr. Giacavone's motion, and this is not verbatim, but it's close, is that it was a motion to approve all of the red line changes to the draft compensatory time policy, except with respect to section 4B, replacing the number 40 where number 45 is present with respect to 40 to 45 hours. So it goes down to 40. And I believe Mr. Giacavone said every other word is the same. So we could incorporate that language into the motion that is referenced in this. And if that was sufficient for the board members, you could take a motion approving the minutes with that one modification. The alternative, if there is any concern with that, if there is, we could, there's another way of going about it as well.
May I ask a question? So if we're not in favor of the motion,
Well, this is just to reflect, right, this is just to reflect that which
the
occurred
change in
on
the
May
minutes.
6th,
Okay.
to make sure that the minutes themselves are accurate, but it would not give any board member an opportunity to modify their vote.
Understood. Thank you.
So what is there a feeling from the board either way on this?
I'm happy to make a motion if the rest of the board's okay with that. I don't think we. All right, so I'll make a motion according to what Ray said to modify section 10 as specified in his description.
Okay.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Ray.
Sure.
The second matter on the agenda is the board may vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of May 16, 2025. Is there such a motion or discussion?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next matter, item 3, is the executive director will present to the board a pilot program using ballot on demand printing in the upcoming special election in Coventry, Central Falls, and Senate District 4, North Providence and Providence, and I will turn it over to the executive director.
Thank you, honorable members of the board. So the staff has been in discussion with our electronic poll book vendor, No Ink, to pilot their ballot on demand solution at the early voting sites for the upcoming special elections and at one single polling place in Central Falls. This isn't the first time the state of Rhode Island has used ballot on demand. Initially, when the state purchased the current voting system, the DS200s from Election Systems and Software, there was a ballot on demand component to that. There were actually, we purchased 100 printers in total, and those were distributed out to the local boards of canvassers for early voting. However, those were only utilized in 2016 and 2018. They were not utilized 2020 forward. And part of the reason for that was because it was very cumbersome to actually print the ballot. The local boards found they had to actually access a separate laptop, which had to also be configured, and they had to walk over and find the precinct number and print the ballot out manually each time. And they found that to be more time consuming than just actually walking over to a pack of ballots on a shelf and taking the appropriate ballot for that voter for their particular precinct. So we, in agreement with the Secretary of State, pulled back on that. There also was not a maintenance agreement purchased with those printers. So by the third election cycle, which would have been 2020, we were seeing significant issues being caused with them, particularly in the presidential preference primary in 2020, where we had some ballot printing issues with them. So we stopped using them in September of 2020 for that reason. I believe, if I recall correctly, we had something like several thousand remake ballots that we had to duplication because of just smearing of the ink. So that was something that we didn't want to have that again in the September primary in 2020. So we do still have those printers, but they're not able to be utilized in this particular implementation. The reason why the implementation with our current electronic poll book vendor is attractive is because they're able to link it directly to the electronic poll book. So when someone comes in, they will receive they will receive the exact ballot that they're checked in and the precinct that they're checked in under. So for example, when a voter walks into the Central Falls City Hall to do early voting, they will check in as any other normal voter would check in. They will, once they're successfully checked in, they actually receive a receipt, which I'll get into in a minute, which is then taken over to another station who will actually take that receipt from the voter, confirm the ballot, the voter has been checked in, and they will receive the appropriate ballot, which will print out automatically out of the ballot on demand printer. So what that does, that eliminates having official ballots stored in the city hall or the town halls for a 20-day period of time. All they will be storing is blank paper during that duration. And we believe, and that is a significant security enhancement for ballot security. Now, ballot on demand has been done at early voting, as I said, but this is the first time, to my knowledge, and that ballot on demand has been done at a polling place. So this would be a first for the state of Rhode Island. And the reason why we're choosing this opportunity to do it is because we have a unique opportunity in that particular polling place in Wilfred Manor in Central Falls. Because that is two, and the board has approved these locations, because that location contains two distinct precincts, meaning one precinct has the citywide referendum question on it and the city council special election on it. The other precinct only has the referendum question on it because those individuals are in another ward in another district. So rather than have two sides where a voter would walk in and have to choose between whether they're on left side or the right side, for example, or side A, side B, normally we would have a greeter assigned to direct that voter to the correct side. But that leads to a delay, figuring out which side they're actually supposed to be on. We don't want them, obviously, to get the wrong ballot. If they go into the wrong side, they will show up grayed out on those poll pads for that side. And then once they see their grayed out, they would direct them to the other side. And this is in what we've done in the past. Under this solution, the voter is going to walk in. There will only be one set of poll workers. There will only be one voting machine. There will be only one set of electronic poll books. They will check in. They will, once they have successfully checked in, there will be a small receipt printer next to each pair of supervisors, which will print out a receipt for that voter to take over to another station where the printer will be located and where a poll worker will be assigned to verify on the receipt that they have what precinct ballot they're supposed to be receiving. We'll take that ballot from the printer, match those up, and put that receipt on a spindle or in a secure place, hand the voter their ballot in a secrecy sleeve, and then that voter can walk over and vote their ballot in the voting booth. So there are a couple of things that we find as beneficial to this process. First, we won't be delivering official ballots to that location, pre-printed official ballots. We will have a small quantity of backup ballots, but not the several hundred that would normally sit in a polling place overnight the day before. They would just be blank paper in that box. So we feel that's a security aspect. The second portion of this, which we are interested in, is the receipt printer is a safeguard to ensure that every voter is successfully checked in on the electronic poll book. Now, if you remember before the electronic poll books, the state used to use ballot applications, and it was a process where before 2016, for example, a voter would have to come in, fill out an application, and it would go on a spindle, and then that voter would then receive a ballot. Even before that, in 2008, for example, 2006, a voter would actually get the application from the supervisor, sign it, but then they would have to walk over to the clerk, who would actually control the ballot stock, give them their ballot when they gave them the ballot application to ensure that they were recorded. So we believe that in order to ensure that every single voter is effectively recorded and checked in on the poll book, this is a safeguard against someone being accidentally checked in. For example, you could have a pair of supervisors talking, maybe discussing something else, distracted, not click the submit button. And that would have to be described on the discrepancy report. In this case, this will ensure that no voter is going to receive a ballot unless they hand that ticket to that particular election official. We did have the opportunity, we have been looking into this for a while, and we actually earmarked some federal monies for this out of the Help America Vote Act and the CARES Act several years ago. And we did actually travel to Utica, New York, in the spring of 2023 to observe their off-year elections, where we were able to see the poll pad in action, the poll print in action, excuse me. And it was a very effective process. They actually had what we would call a vote center set up there. So they actually had several districts in that location, voters from different contests receiving different ballots, and they had the receipt printers. And we did interview some of the poll workers there, and the election officials there, and they were very impressed with the technology of the ballot on demand printing. We feel that this is a small scale election. I think on my next slide, I have a chart there, which does break down how many voters we would see in this pilot. In the Central Falls early voting, we would expect about 341 voters to participate through this pilot. In the North Providence, it would be 770, and this is over a 20-day period. And in Central Falls, for the precinct, the Wilford Manor, that would be about 124 people we expect to go through that polling place on election day. Coventry, we didn't order this pilot to be conducted by the, we didn't have to. We asked the local boards of canvassers, would they want to participate in this? We felt it was a good opportunity. And we did ask Coventry. They declined to participate because they have a new clerk there. And she's involved with another initiative that we have with some project management software. So we're thankful for that. So we acknowledge that it would be a lot for her to take on in her first election. So they are not going to participate. Providence only expects about 30 people to vote early. We did reach out to Providence as well. They are not interested in participating due to the low volume, but they are interested in seeing this in action. We do plan on inviting the local boards of canvassers to go to Central Falls on election day to see this in action, but also to go to the early voting sites anytime during that 20-day period for Central Falls and North Providence, who have agreed to undergo this pilot, so they can see how the technology works, and get a firsthand impression of how this system could work in Rhode Island polls. Now, we do not have enough funding to roll this out at all the polling places, because it would be a tremendous cost. That's a long-term goal. But we do believe we have the ability to put this into each early voting site for the 2026, potentially the 2026 primary and general election. And because that would only require at least 2 printers for each early voting site. One is a backup And then we also would have 3 or 4 for the larger communities that would have a significant number of voters during their early voting period. And that is certainly a tremendous benefit. We feel many local boards of canvassers are deciding to move their early voting off-site. So they're not going into the city hall, town halls anymore because they cannot handle the volume due to the tremendous popularity of early voting. So this is a significant upgrade in security because instead of official ballots being stored in off-site locations such as the community center or a municipal building, which they might be using, we're only going to be storing blank ballot paper there. And rather than having to dump all of these unused ballots after the election into a recycling dumpster to be recycled, we're only going to print what's needed for election day. We certainly have the ability to print additional, to provide additional paper if need be, but rather than having official ballots being run out to a polling place, for example, we're just going to be running out blank pieces of ballot paper. And it's certainly going to be a significant cost savings for the state, and the Secretary of State does purchase the ballot. So this would be a partnership between us and the Department of State if this initiative were to be rolled out. Yes.
Just a quick question. So you answered most, like all of them, which was really helpful. But specifically, because I was thinking of the backup. So one, I wonder how are you thinking of measuring what percentage of backup, of backup documents you're going to have for each? I'm assuming it depends on the race or sort of what kind of election it is in the city. But second, what are we going to do? There are times that machines completely break. And hopefully, if it's, for example, next year we have statewide elections, the hope is that we would have more than 2 or 2 or more printers. My question is I guess this is not an answer for today, but I think it's something to plan ahead. What do we do for a statewide race where we're going to have a lot more people, both the early and same day, if 1 or 2 of the machines completely break? And to your point, let's say we have 10% of backup documents. I guess what can we do? What can be done if something terrible happens and the machine, like 2 machines go down? Again, I'm not saying you have to have the answer, but I'm just thinking of like worst case scenario. But I really like the idea of not having to waste paper. But I think it's an interesting thought.
So for this particular pilot, we are going to be printing about 100 as a backup to send to the early
For
voting
each?
sites. Yes, into the precinct.
Mhm.
Just because it's a pilot and we're testing this, we're more interested in testing the over, but we don't want to be vulnerable to any sort of breakdown in equipment, et cetera.
Mhm.
I've also instructed the staff to, when they do the logic and accuracy testing, to use ballots that are printed out of these ballot on demand printers, because rather than have them printed by a printer or printed by another machine, like our existing ballotars, we call them. That's from the original legacy ES&S system. They still work fine. We print ballots in-house if we need to do duplications for damaged ballots, et cetera. Or if we have to run ballots out to a polling place on election day, we can utilize those. But we want to use the brand new poll printers that we have in this pilot to print the test ballots, because we want to make sure that they can go through. If they can go through in testing, they can go through on election day or during the early voting period. But yes, so there are a couple of strategies for the backup. Some jurisdictions will actually have the poll workers print a certain quantity of backups at the beginning of the day when they first open up. So they might have a standard 50 or 75 or 8 or 100 as a backup to print in case there's an issue. And those obviously probably aren't going to get used, and they probably end up being voided at the end of the day, and it's in their accounting. And we could do the same thing with the boards of canvassers. We can just instruct them on the first day of early voting, you should print X number of backup ballots just to have as storage. But there certainly will always be a backup component. It just won't be the thousands of ballots that unused that we're throwing away after the early voting cycle. And we can always ensure that every single location will have enough paper, because it's very easy for us to bring paper from one jurisdiction, such as Bristol to Barrington. And we have much more flexibility in supplying the paper to different locations, especially on election day, but also during the early voting period.
Other questions from the board members?
A few questions from Miguel. So for this
small election in this demo, we wouldn't own these printers, right? We're using them.
No, we would not own them. We are just using them. We did something similar with the with the poll pads in 2016, where we ran a small pilot with 4 communities. It would be something similar where we would be just utilizing the equipment as a part of a test process with an existing vendor. And we would be returning them after the pilot is conducted.
Say the pilot is successful and we decide to move in this way statewide, would that be something we would have to purchase in bulk?
We would. It would be a manageable cost, perhaps, if it's only to early voting. If it is something that would happen at the precincts, that would be a substantially higher cost because each of these printers can cost several $1,000s. You have to supply at least 2 to every precinct. So if you imagine we have 414 locations on a non-presidential year, you're probably talking close to 1,000 printers. Most jurisdictions that are utilizing ballot on demand at the precincts have vote centers. And vote centers mean rather than Rhode Island having 414 locations, you would cut that down to 150 or 100 and strategically put them across the entire state, where anyone in the town could go to. Anyone in that town can go to any location. So they're not restricted to just going to, one particular precinct. They can just go into a vote center. The ballot will print out, the ballot that they would be eligible for would print out from that printer. So that gives them the flexibility to be able to move anywhere to vote anywhere in the town and not be confined to just their neighborhood polling place. But that is, because there are fewer locations involved with that, it's less of a cost. And that's why jurisdictions that have vote centers are able to do that. Since we're still based on a precinct system, that would be prohibitively costly to do. And that would take a change from the General Assembly to allow us to do any sort of vote centers. We're able to do it in this aspect because we're able to combine, and they're both polling places are in the same building. So we're just utilizing the resources more efficiently in that building. However, anything beyond, and Ray can confirm, but anything in a statewide election, we are required to operate distinct precincts based on the precinct caps.
Right. You answered my next question, which was, would that require changing legislation if we move to that type of voting system? Another question separate from that, when you were talking about how it works, it sounds like there's an additional step involved where a voter checks in, they get a receipt, now they have to go to another station. So I understand in a polling location where there's going to be 2 together, that might shrink the number of poll workers needed. But in a normal single polling location, it seems like you might have to add poll workers for this.
Correct. The more you have, the more ballot eligible voters and the more ballot styles that you're introducing, the more poll workers you need. But you're still going to need less than operating 2 separate polling places. So there is a benefit where you are being more efficient in managing that 2, 3, or 4 locations. Basically, if we had 4 different ballot styles, we could still operate this single unit, and we would have 2 printers there, for example, and both printers could print all 4 ballot styles. So a voter from any one of those particular precincts would get their distinct ballot style if when they checked in on the electronic poll book.
Thank you.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Thanks. I think it's a great idea, Miguel. So thank you for doing the work on this. It just has quick questions. Is this a trial that we're paying for? Are they loaning those to us just for a test, or how's that work?
There is no cost
Oh,
to the state for this.
Do you have an estimate of, you think, the cost savings one of these would cost to save versus printing the ballots as we do now?
I think we had done some cost analysis. I would have to get back to you. I do plan on presenting just a brief summary to the board on how it went. And then maybe I can work with the Secretary of State to just determine some ballpark numbers of what the state would be saving. Because that would be very interesting to see if you're making that initial investment, but you're saving millions of dollars over a 10-year period, then it'd be well worth it.
Do you anticipate, I mean, maybe not with this trial, but the type of training that the staff would need or the poll workers would need when you deploy these?
Yes, for this particular one, we have made arrangements they are going to be sending in representatives prior to Election Day, I believe very soon, in the next week or two, to actually do training for the boards of canvassers on this. And then for those particular poll workers who are working at that Wilford Manor, they will require some additional training since they have not seen or interacted with this system. It is not too far from what they already do, since we have used the electronic poll books, the no ink poll pads. But there are some extra steps in there that would need to be done. For example, if a voter spoils their ballot, typically right now they would just go back to the supervisors or to the clerk, excuse me, and have them void it, put it in a voided envelope, and get a new ballot from the regular stock. But now there's a process where they would have to go onto the poll pad that is attached to if you go back to the previous screen, that poll pad that's on the poll print there in that blue case, that's actually just serves as a dedicated, basically server poll pad for that printer, which is hardwired into the printer, so it's not wirelessly connected into it. And they would actually have to authorize a reprint of the ballot on that poll pad right there in order to get the voter a new replacement ballot. So there are a few steps that would have to be taken by the poll worker, and they need to be trained on that. But we would just scale that up to what it would be needed for Election Day when we integrate the training into our standard training programs that we have existing.
In the post, I'd asked him for the benefit of the board. I had sent Miguel some questions this morning regarding his email. And we had talked about after the polls closed, that you intend to have some sort of modifications to the auditing to ensure, we may not have that information yet, but that's something you're going to work on.
Correct. So what the receipts do help us with is to better, at the end of the night, just as years ago when we used to count ballot applications, we used to have them numbered, and we would, if you had, we would have to print 1 through 100, 0 through 100, 100 through 200, have them use them in order, and then at the end of the night, they would look at the number on the last application on the spindle, and it would say 905. They knew they had 905 voters for the day. So we would be looking at hopefully something similar where we could verify the number of receipts to the actual number of check-ins, and then anything there's a discrepancy would have to be noted on the official discrepancy report. So that's just one more extra measure to audit the turnout for the election at that particular location.
And I did ask a couple technical questions. I'll keep it short just for the benefit of not boring everyone. But I just had some questions about, which thank you, Miguel, for answering, what the connectivity is. It sounds like that's almost like a standalone server. So it has no internet connectivity. So I assume prior to the election, much like you do with the poll pads, we just upload or maybe, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make that assumption that whether it has the voter list on it, I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of.
It does have the voter list because it needs to attach the ballot style for each voter to the actual voter, what they're eligible for.
Okay. And I may just have some follow-up questions just because I was interested in the connectivity between this machine and the poll pads, but for the most part, I appreciate you answering my questions. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and I would encourage the board, I'll send out an email reminder just if you want to stop by the early voting locations, either in North Providence or in Central Falls or on Election Day. I think it's a good opportunity to see it in action in a real election.
Just have one quick question. Is this used in other states successfully, Miguel?
It is. As I said, we did go up to Utica, New York. It's not. They are used in Los Angeles County too, so obviously that's the biggest county that it operates in. But it is used in multiple jurisdictions. I think they had on there at least 6 million ballots have been cast through the poll print so far, and it is a fairly new system. When we last saw it, it didn't support color, and now they do have a color solution for color ballots. Not sure if that is actually necessary because the law doesn't specifically state we have to have a colored ballot, but that's a discussion with the Secretary of State as far as if they want to go to grayscale, if they want to continue using the yellow backgrounds. But obviously going with the grayscale would be a significant savings in purchasing the hardware.
Thank you.
I also have just a question on the actual ballot that's printed out. The appearance of the ballot, will it duplicate what printed ballots you have? 'Cause
It would
all the
be-
ballots look the same.
Identical. It's an identical ballot from pre-printed ballots.
Identical ballot, identical paper,
Correct.
even between your backups and what comes out of the machine.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't believe we have a vote on this, correct, right?
There's no need for a vote. There's no change in any law. Your precincts are already approved. Everything has been approved already.
And you'll send us a reminder just so that we can take a look at it when
Absolutely.
we start the program. Great. Thanks, Miguel.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think that brings us to item 4. The board may discuss and vote to enter into a contract with PCC Technology, DBA Civics, located in Lake Mary, Florida, for purpose of configuring a campaign finance module for the board with related software license, hosting, and maintenance services. And my understanding, Director, is that we're asking to move this to our next meeting. Is that correct?
Correct. We're still waiting for some answers on some of the historical data from the vendor, the availability of that, and I'd like to have that ready when I present this to the board. So that will be at the next meeting, which tentatively would be the 17th.
I mean, if anyone has any questions right now, we can address them certainly, but I don't know what the board's pleasure is. If you just want to move it for continuance to, is it to the 18th?
The 17th is the plan, yes.
So that could be by motion. If you are going to continue it to the next meeting, you should take a motion to that
Continue by
effect.
motion. Is
So moved.
there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to continue this matter to our meeting of July 17th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And the last matter on the agenda is item 5. The board may vote to convene an executive session regarding an investigation into allegations of misconduct, either civil or criminal, in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5A4 on 2 separate matters. Is there such a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are in executive session. public session. I will ask Ray to report out from executive session, and then we'll have a motion to seal those minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one matter to report out into open session from the executive session. It's a matter involving a Mr. Bruce Rogers, and a motion was made by Board Member Connors, and it was seconded by Ms. Beckencourt to approve a letter, a notice of warning letter to Mr. Rogers concerning the collection of signatures for nomination papers during the 2024 election cycle. The motion passed with all 5 board members voting in favor, none opposed. And that's it.
And is there a motion to seal the minutes of that executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. There are any opposed? There's no nays. There are no other matters of business officially on the calendar. However, I'm going to turn this over to my former chair when I first came to the meeting, and
Oh, wow.
that's Commissioner Medeiros. And I would, first of all, on a personal basis, I didn't realize this was going to be her last meeting, but on a personal basis, I would like to give her my personal thanks because she was the chair when I first came on board. And although she moved my seat, at
My
one
God, he
point,
carries a grudge.
she has served the board with honor, distinction, honesty, and she had nothing but a welcoming countenance for me when I first came to the board. And I also came to the board during COVID, and she
Yes.
handled the board and all the matters brilliantly. And I can't thank her enough for basically showing me how to be a proper board
Wow,
member.
thank
So
you.
I am eternally grateful for that, and
Thank
I will
you.
turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, that was very nice. Even though you're still griping about your seats.
I couldn't resist
I
that.
know.
I couldn't resist that.
Well, as Louis said, this will be my last meeting as a member of the board. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank board members past and present for their unselfish dedication to our mission. And also to give thanks and credit to the BOE staff for their work over the years during some very difficult times while I was chair and on the board, to see that we in Rhode Island have safe, fair, and well-run elections. My hat goes off to them. I wish you all well. And it has been an honor and a privilege to serve on the board for these 9 years. And I'm very sure my replacement will do an admirable job. So thank you all for all your support over the years. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
If there's no other business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn
I will
from.
make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Vice Chair.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
My God, we should have brought cake. Patty's pies. That's right. I've heard Patty makes cakes. Where's Patty's cake?